What if the very place you called home turned against you for the color of your skin? In the tranquil embrace of Willowmere Hollow, where dawn's first light wove golden threads through ancient sycamores, the world seemed to pause in reverence. This was no ordinary suburb. It was a haven of manicured lawns, whispering breezes, and a quiet pride that its residents wore like a badge. Along the serpentine trails of its central park, Dr. Amara Cole moved with purpose, her running shoes striking the earth in a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. At 42, Amara was more than a marathoner's silhouette against the sunrise. She was a titan in her field, a lead investigator for the State Integrity Commission, revered for dismantling webs of corruption with a mind as sharp as her resolve. Her athletic frame, clad in sleek gear, cut through the morning mist, earbuds humming with a podcast on justice reform that mirrored her life's mission. This daily ritual wasn't just exercise, it was her sanctuary, a fleeting hour where the weight of exposing systemic rot gave way to the simple freedom of breath and stride. Willowmere, with its promise of peace, had lured her from the city's relentless pulse 3 years ago. Here she'd hoped to find balance, a place where her daughter could grow without fear, where neighbors nodded in genuine warmth. Yet beneath the suburb's polished veneer, an undercurrent of judgment simmered, one Amara had felt in sidelong glances and clipped greetings. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across her path, she remained unaware that this morning's run would unravel the fragile illusion of belonging she'd dared to trust. As Amara rounded a bend in the trail, her breath steady against the podcast's murmur of reformist ideals, a low rumble fractured the morning's calm. A patrol car crept along the park's edge, its tires crunching gravel with deliberate slowness. Inside, Officer Nathan Bryce gripped the wheel, his jaw tight, eyes locked on Amara's form. At 34, Nathan was Willowmere's self-appointed sentinel, a man molded by a childhood under a father who preached order above all. Order that, to Nathan, meant keeping things in their proper place. To him, Amara's presence, a black woman moving with confidence through the heart of this pristine suburb, jarred like a wrong note in a symphony. Willowmere was his domain, its harmony his to protect, and his gut whispered that she didn't belong. He'd patrolled these streets for a decade, long enough to know every face, or so he thought. Yet Amara, with her purposeful stride and sleek gear, didn't fit the mental map he'd drawn of the neighborhood's rightful residents. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Trust your instincts, son. Outsiders bring trouble. The sight of her sparked a reflex he couldn't shake, a need to assert control. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the car's lights, their red and blue pulses slicing through the dawn's haze. The vehicle veered onto the trail's shoulder, cutting off Amara's path with a boldness that felt, to Nathan, like righteousness. Amara slowed, her rhythm faltering as she tugged an earbud free. Her brow creased, not in fear but in a weary recognition that pricked her heart. She'd felt this before, the weight of eyes that judged before they saw, the assumption that her existence required explanation. The car's lights flashed like a warning, and as Nathan stepped out, his uniform crisp but his posture radiating challenge, she braced herself. His boots hit the ground with a thud that seemed to echo beyond the park, a sound that carried the arrogance of unchecked power. Hey! Nathan's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. What's your business here? Amara stopped a few paces away, her water bottle glinting in the sunlight as she gestured to her running attire. I'm jogging, she said, her tone even, though a spark of frustration flickered beneath it. She met his gaze, her dark eyes steady, daring him to see her, not the caricature his mind had already crafted. Nathan's lips curled slightly, skepticism etched into every line of his face. Jogging, huh? Funny, I don't recall seeing you around. His words dripped with accusation, as if her presence alone were a crime he was duty-bound to unravel. He took a step closer, his hand resting near his radio, a silent threat. We've had complaints about strangers in the area. Care to explain why you're really here? Amara's chest tightened, not with fear but with the absurdity of it all. Strangers? She'd lived in Willowmere for 3 years, her home a mere half-mile from this very trail. She'd waved to neighbors, hosted book clubs, watched her daughter ride bikes down these same streets. Yet here, in the place she'd chosen for its promise of peace, she was reduced to an outsider by a man who saw only her skin. Her voice remained calm, but it carried an edge honed by years of dismantling lies. "I live here," she said. "I run this trail every morning. That's all you need to know." Nathan's eyes narrowed, unmoved. To him, her composure was defiance, her clarity a challenge. In that moment, the quiet beauty of Willowmere Hollow faded, replaced by a battlefield where prejudice drew the lines. And Amara stood alone, unaware of how swiftly this encounter would ignite a fire neither she nor Nathan could contain. Nathan's eyes bored into Amara, his skepticism hardening into something uglier. Her words, "I live here," hung in the air, dismissed as swiftly as they were spoken. To him, they were a dodge, a flimsy shield against his authority. The morning light caught the badge pinned to his chest, glinting like a challenge. But Amara held her ground, her posture unyielding. She knew this dance, the one where truth was twisted to fit a narrative already written in the lines of a man's face. "Live here?" Nathan scoffed, his voice thick with disbelief. "No ID, I bet. Convenient." He folded his arms, his stance widening as if to claim the trail itself. "We've had break-ins reported nearby. You match the profile. Wrong place, wrong time. So let's try this again. What's your real story?" Amara's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger breaking through her calm. "Profile?" The word landed like a stone, heavy with all it implied. She gestured to her running gear, the smartwatch tracking her miles, the water bottle clipped to her waist. "This is my story," she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "I'm a resident. I'm exercising. I don't owe you more than that." Her eyes flicked to the trail behind him, where a jogger slowed, phone in hand, and an elderly couple paused, their whispers carrying on the breeze. Witnesses. Good. She'd need them. Nathan's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. The weight of eyes on him, those nosy neighbors he'd waved to 100 times, stoked his irritation. He wasn't about to be schooled on his own turf. "No ID, no proof," he snapped, stepping closer, his shadow falling over her. "That's suspicious enough for me. Turn around. Now." Amara didn't move. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the absurdity of being cornered in her own neighborhood. She thought of her daughter, asleep in their home down the road, oblivious to the lesson her mother was about to endure. Years of dismantling corruption had taught Amara how power could distort truth. But this was personal. "Officer," she said, her voice low, deliberate, "you're making a serious mistake. Think about what you're doing." "Mistake?" Nathan's temper flared, his hand darting to the handcuffs at his belt. "You don't get to lecture me. Turn around, or I'll make you." His shout drew more eyes. Phones raised higher, voices murmuring louder. A woman called out, "She's just running!" But Nathan ignored her, his focus locked on Amara's defiance. She met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm advising you to reconsider," she said, her words carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd faced worse and won. But Nathan was too far gone, his pride a wildfire burning through reason. He lunged, grabbing for her arm. Amara sidestepped instinctively, her runner's reflexes kicking in, leaving him grasping air. The crowd gasped, a man yelling, "Leave her alone!" as phones captured every second. "That's it!" Nathan roared, his face reddening. "Resisting arrest!" He charged again, this time catching her wrist with a roughness that made her wince. Amara could have fought. Her training in self-defense was no secret, but she chose not to. Not here. Not with cameras rolling. She let him wrench her arms behind her back, the cold bite of handcuffs snapping shut. Her calm only fueled his fury. "You think you're smart?" he hissed, shoving her toward the patrol car. "You're the one making a scene," Amara said softly, her voice cutting through his bluster as he opened the car door. The crowd's protest grew louder. Someone shouted, "We're filming this!" But Nathan slammed the door shut, sealing her inside. His hands shook as he climbed into the driver's seat, a mix of rage and unease twisting his gut. Through the window, Amara's gaze was steady, unbowed, a silent promise that this wasn't over. As Nathan radioed in, his voice cracked with forced bravado. "This is Officer Bryce, Willowmere Patrol. Suspect detained, resisted arrest, possible trespassing. Send backup." The lie was blatant, and the crowd knew it. "She didn't resist," a teenager yelled, holding his phone like a weapon. Another voice joined in. "This is going viral." Amara leaned back in the seat, her expression serene despite the cuffs digging into her wrists. Nathan had no idea the storm he'd just unleashed, a storm that would tear through his world and leave nothing untouched. The patrol car lurched forward, its tires spitting gravel as Nathan tried to outrun the crowd's rising chorus. "You're a disgrace," a woman shouted, her phone steady as she filmed Nathan's retreat. Another voice, sharp with indignation, pierced the air. "She did nothing wrong." Amara sat in the back, wrists chafed by the cuffs, her gaze fixed on the world beyond the smudged window. Willowmere's idyllic facades, white picket fences, blooming azaleas, blurred past, a cruel mockery of the safety she'd once believed in. Yet her face betrayed no fear, only a quiet certainty, like a lighthouse standing firm against a gale. She'd faced liars and power brokers in boardrooms and courtrooms. This was just another battle, and she'd already calculated her moves. Nathan's hands trembled on the wheel, his bravado cracking under the weight of those relentless cameras. He'd meant to restore order, to put her in her place, but the crowd's fury clung to him like damp rot. "Keep quiet back there," he muttered, though Amara hadn't spoken. Her silence unnerved him more than any protest could. It was the silence of someone who knew the game was already won. He jabbed the radio again, his voice pitching higher. "Bryce here. Suspects combative. Possible threat. ETA to station 5 minutes." The lie tasted sour, and he avoided the rearview mirror, afraid of the eyes he'd find there. Outside, the crowd didn't scatter. A jogger sprinted to keep pace, filming until the car turned a corner. "This is going online," a man bellowed, his words chasing Nathan like a promise. Amara's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. She thought of her daughter, who'd wake soon to a world where truth could still triumph, thanks to those phones. She thought of her years exposing corruption, how each victory began with a single spark. This, she knew, was hers. At the station, Nathan marched Amara through the double doors, his grip on her arm unnecessarily tight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows across a room of officers who glanced up, then away, sensing trouble. "Got one for trespassing and resisting," Nathan announced, his voice loud to mask its quiver. He shoved paperwork onto the desk, expecting nods of approval. Instead, a rookie officer frowned, eyeing Amara's calm demeanor, her running gear pristine, her posture regal despite the cuffs. "Combative, you said?" the rookie muttered. But Nathan ignored him, scribbling notes to cement his story. Amara stood silent, her presence a quiet rebuke. She scanned the room, noting the flicker of doubt in the officers' faces. She didn't need to speak. The truth was already clawing its way free. Then the station doors flew open with a force that silenced every murmur. Commander Elena Voss stormed in, her boots striking the floor like thunderclaps. In her hand, a tablet glowed with a live stream that had already racked up thousands of views. The footage was unmistakable. Nathan's aggression, Amara's restraint, the crowd's outrage, all laid bare in pixelated clarity. "Bryce!" Voss's voice was a blade, cutting through Nathan's lingering swagger. He froze, pen slipping from his fingers. "Commander, I was just—" "Save it!" she snapped, slamming the tablet onto the desk. The screen looped Nathan's lunge, Amara's sidestep, the cuffs snapping shut. Gasps rippled through the room as officers leaned closer, their whispers turning to mutters of disbelief. Voss's eyes blazed as she turned to Nathan. "Trespassing? Resisting? Do you have any idea who you've dragged in here?" Nathan's mouth opened, but no words came. His face paled, sweat beating at his temples. Amara stepped forward, her voice calm but resonant, like a judge delivering a verdict. "I tried to warn you, Officer Bryce." Voss's gaze softened briefly as it met Amara's, then hardened again on Nathan. "Dr. Amara Cole," she said, each syllable deliberate, "lead investigator for the State Integrity Commission. Your superior in ways you can't even fathom." The room seemed to shrink, the air heavy with Nathan's dawning horror. The rookie dropped his coffee mug, the crash echoing like a gavel. Amara's eyes held Nathan's, not with triumph, but with a clarity that stung worse. She'd given him every chance to stop, and he'd chosen ruin. The tablet kept playing, the crowd's shouts now a chorus of condemnation. She didn't resist. You lied. Nathan's world tilted, and for the first time, he saw the storm he'd summoned, its winds already tearing his career apart. The station's air grew thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of the tablet looping its damning footage. Nathan Bryce stood rooted, his face a mask of ash, as Commander Elena Voss's words, Dr. Amara Cole, lead investigator for the State Integrity Commission, echoed like a death knell. The officers around him shifted uncomfortably, their glances darting between Nathan's unraveling composure and Amara's unyielding calm. Her cuffs, still glinting under the harsh lights, seemed less a restraint now than a badge of her endurance. She stepped forward, the click of her running shoes on the linoleum deliberate, and addressed Nathan with a voice that carried the weight of years spent toppling giants. I told you to think carefully, she said. You didn't listen. Voss raised a hand, silencing Nathan's stammered attempt at defense. Enough, she barked, her eyes sweeping the room like a spotlight. She tapped the tablet, pulling up Nathan's file, a digital dossier that unraveled faster than his excuses. Complaints of excessive force, biased stops, a pattern of instincts that targeted those who didn't fit his vision of Willamere's order. The rookie officer who'd questioned Nathan earlier sucked in a breath, his earlier doubt now vindicated. This isn't one mistake, Voss said, her tone cold as steel. It's a career built on them. You're suspended, Bryce, effective immediately. Full investigation starts now. Nathan's knees buckled, his badge suddenly heavy, a symbol of authority he'd wielded like a club now slipping from his grasp. Commander, I was protecting the community, he pleaded, but the words crumbled under the weight of the live stream still playing. Amara's restraint, his aggression, the crowd's cries. An officer near the desk muttered, Protecting? You humiliated us all. The room's consensus was clear. Nathan's storm had swept him away, leaving wreckage in its wake. Amara's gaze shifted from Nathan to the officers, her presence commanding attention without effort. This isn't about one man, she said, her voice resonant, cutting through the tension like a blade through fog. It's about a system that let him think this was acceptable. That stops today. Her words landed with the force of a vow, not just to Nathan, but to every badge in the room, every policy that had failed Willamere's promise of safety. She thought of her daughter, of neighbors who deserved better, of communities beyond these manicured streets where fear wore uniforms. Change wasn't a hope, it was her mandate. Voss nodded, her expression a mix of respect for Amara and disgust for the rot exposed. Let this be a lesson, she declared, addressing the room. We serve the public, not our prejudices. Anyone who can't uphold that can turn in their badge now. The silence that followed was heavy, a collective reckoning that hung over the station like a storm cloud ready to break. As Amara's cuffs were removed, the metal clinking softly, she rubbed her wrists and stepped toward the exit. The doors swung open to a crowd that had gathered outside, their phones lowered now, replaced by cheers that swelled like a tide. Dr. Cole, a teenager shouted, the same one who'd filmed Nathan's lies. An elderly woman from the trail clasped her hands, tears in her eyes, whispering, Thank you. Amara offered a nod, her face composed, but her heart stirred by their voices. Willamere's beauty, the sycamores, the golden light, felt reclaimed in that moment, but she knew it was fragile, a victory that demanded vigilance. She walked through the crowd, her steps purposeful, her mind already mapping the road ahead. The live stream had gone viral, she learned later, millions of views, hashtags demanding justice, calls for reform echoing from Willowmere to distant cities. But for Amara, this wasn't about fame or vengeance. It was about dismantling the culture that had let Nathan thrive, the silent permissions that turned neighbors into suspects. She'd file reports, push for audits, train officers herself if needed. whatever it took to ensure no one else felt the sting of cuffs for simply existing. Behind her, Nathan sat alone in the station's break room, the fluorescent buzz his only company. His badge lay on the table, untouched, its shine dulled by the weight of his choices. He'd face hearings, maybe worse, but the real punishment was the mirror he couldn't avoid, the one reflecting a man undone by his own hand. For Amara, his fall was a footnote. The real work lay in the marathon ahead, the slow, relentless pursuit of a world where trust wasn't a privilege, but a right. As she disappeared down Willowmere's winding streets, the crowd's applause faded, but her resolve burned brighter than the morning sun. The air carried a new promise, one she'd fight for with every breath. No community, no matter how serene its facade, would rest until justice was its foundation.